Thank you very much. And once again, I'm back. My name is Anne Renew. I'm the Vice Chair of the Advocacy Committee, the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce. Our vision as a Chamber of Commerce is to be the foremost channel of trade and commerce between Nigeria and Britain. And our mission obviously is to continuously encourage and promote mutually beneficial trade relationships between Nigeria and Britain. Without much ado, our cardinal goals, they include trade production, trade facilitation, positively influencing policy, communicate government policy, networking, and enriching member experience. Just to remind everyone about the webinar guidelines, if your Zoom volume is too low, check your system volume. The webinar is being recorded, so please be aware. We will be available on our YouTube channel and on the Nigeria Chamber of Commerce, the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce. And to comment and to have discussions, please remember to use the chat icon, and then finally submit your questions via the Q&A icon. Only those will be answered during the question and answer session. You, of course, have an opportunity, as always, to reach out to us at the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce if you would like some information, particularly if you would like to join and participate in a valuable organization. So without much ado, I'd like to sort of move on to introduce and to welcome our president and the chairman of the council, Mr. Kayode Falowo. Kayode Falowo is the 15th president and chairman of the council of the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce. He's also the chairman of the Greenwich Trust Limited, a leading investment banking firm in Nigeria. He is a chartered stockbroker with over 30 years postgraduate experience and practice in finance, especially in commercial and investment banking. Prior to him assuming his current role, he served as the Group Managing Director and the CEO, Greenwich Trust Limited. He was the North-South Bank PLC from 1990 to 1994, and also Assistant Manager, Nigerian Agric Cooperative Bank, NACB, from 1985 to 1990. He has been at the realm of affairs and has done an excellent Chamber of Commerce and really coming forward with innovative thinking and promoting trade. I'd like to formally welcome Kayode Falowo. Thank you very much, my president, and we would hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Renew. Thank you for the generous introduction. The Honorable Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Her Excellency, Ambassador Mariam Katagum, the representative of the Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, Country Director of the World Bank, Mr. Shubham Chuduri, patrons and council members of the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to yet another great event of the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce. In particular today, we welcome you to the NBCC Business Advocacy Roundtable organized by our chamber. We must thank especially Her Excellency for creating time in a very busy schedule to attend this. Indeed, just last week, we had a colleague, the Minister, Tubani Adebayo, on a call with us during the Global Investment Conference. And that speaks to the kind of cooperation that the NBCC has been able to forge with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. And we do hope that that collaboration will continue as we both try to drive investment and trade into our dear country. In light of the effects of the pandemic on the Nigerian economy, and in response to the federal government's palliative measures to help cushion the effects of the pandemic, the NBCC has considered it expedient to host this Business Advocacy Roundtable. The purpose of the roundtable is to convene business executives and of course, our leaders in the public sector and policymakers to discuss and provide solutions to issues affecting the Nigerian business environment. On behalf of the Council, I'm delighted to welcome all our guest speakers to this event, which shall be moderated by one of the rising stars in our chamber, Mr. David Brown. David is the principal consultant at the DB Consulting and Consultants to the World Bank. I am quite certain that our distinguished speakers will do justice to the theme, and we shall all be better prepared to ride the turbulence associated with the events of the last 1 year in the whole world. I especially recognize our patrons and council members who are here on this call. I recognize Deputy President BC Adeyemi, who's on the call, and our various vice presidents that are on the call also. The NBCC, as many of you will know, is a bilateral organization whose main objective is to foster trade and investment between the Nigerian and the UK. But I think we've taken this to a different level. As many of you will have noticed, last week we had actually a global investment conference, and the theme really was around Africa and positioning Nigeria as the hub of African trade. I'm quite pleased for all of you who are on this call to please take that into your minds and begin to see Nigeria as that hub, which I believe it will become in a matter of years to come. NBCC is a 43-year-old institution. We're not young, we're quite old. And we have over 350 top corporate organizations in Nigeria. All the names you care to know are members. And in particular, I'm proud to also say that Standard Chartered Bank, represented by Anne Rinu, who introduced me, is one of our premium members. Our premium members are those organizations that have been there for the chambers over the years. They have been funding our activities, providing us with very strong technical inputs, donating their high-level resource persons to ensure that the chamber does very well. So you have Standard Chartered Bank, PwC, Access Bank, British Airways, Custodian and Allied Insurance, First Bank, Fidelity Bank, UTL Trustees, and Wema Bank PLC in that category of membership. And I will invite those of you on this call whose companies belong to that category to please also contact our secretariat so that you can become a premium member. And for those who are yet to join the chamber, I think it is also advisable that you do so, because being a member actually gives you access not just to the Nigerian businesses, 350 businesses, and like I mentioned, name it, in terms of manufacturing, trade, investments, banking, insurance, all the top players are members of the NBCC. So that gives you access to a network of membership, gives you access to a network of members of the British Chamber of Commerce, who are indeed affiliates of the NBCC. And not just these 53 chambers across the UK, but also 49 other affiliates worldwide. So if you want to have trade relationship in Thailand, trade relationship in Venezuela, trade relationship anywhere in the world, the NBCC is there to provide you with this platform. So I have the pleasure of inviting companies who are on this call to please go to our website, fill our membership forms, and upon completion of that process of admission, you would have access to the tremendous benefits attributable to membership of what we consider, and rightly so, the foremost bilateral chamber in Nigeria. Now, the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic has been quite topical, and indeed has set off a global economic crisis of unprecedented magnitude, which has necessitated the implementation of stringent policies across the world. The far-reaching effects of COVID-19, coupled with the attendant unemployment and destruction to both large and small businesses, is a matter of great concern. It is almost certain that the Nigerian economy will contract in 2020, possibly triggering a recession and the worst in 4 decades. Today, we will discuss the strategies for economic recovery that will be beneficial to the various sectors of the Nigerian business environment. This discussion is key because the future of Nigeria depends on the decisions that the government and businesses take today. As the federal and state governments focus on tackling the aftermath of the pandemic and challenges of our current realities. Our discussions today should bring to the fore the initiatives and schemes available to vulnerable businesses that may enable them meet their obligations and safeguard jobs from the shock of COVID-19 pandemic, and in so doing, help to boost the Nigerian economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention and wish you a productive session. I now have the pleasure to invite our member and friend, the moderator for today's event, Mr. David Brown. David Brown, please welcome and thank you for agreeing to moderate today's event. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for everybody that has joined us from all over the world. And thanks again for joining us. And I would like to just kick the ball rolling. I'll just jump right in. So I'm David Brown, Managing Partner, D. Brown Consulting. I'm also an international consultant with the World Bank itself, and Microsoft Most Valuable Professional on data analytics. But really, this is about us. This is about a reset. And what I would like us to do, and what I'd like us to kind of think about, is that the world itself went through a whole reset. It doesn't happen in lifetimes, really, that the world goes through a reset. So the world has gone through a huge reset, and we would like to see what progress that we've made as a country in kind of recovering from this reset. Everybody has a different recovery plan. And as our president has said, NBC president has said, he's given an introduction of what the realities are for Nigeria. So I won't bore you with that. I would like to go straight away and welcome our first speaker. I would like to welcome Ambassador Mariam Katagum. She's the Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment. As an investment driving ministry, Ambassador Katagum is with her counterpart, Honorable Minister Otumba Richard Adeni Adebayo, CON, leading the promotion of government's policies of ease of doing business, job creation, poverty eradication, and industrialization implementation of various policies and programs, including standardization of bilateral trade agreements, stimulating growth of domestic micro, small, and medium enterprises, and renewed roadmap to increase Nigeria's foreign direct investment. Ambassador Katagum is also an educationist, diplomat, and international cooperation expert with leadership experience in Nigerian public service and within the United Nations system. Please join me in welcoming Her Excellency Ambassador Mariam Katagum as she gives her opening address. Your mic, ma. You have to click your mic. Don't worry, it's a normal thing. It's a new lexicon. Mike, your mic. Yeah. Don't worry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and thanks for the warm welcome. The President and Chairman of the Council of the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce, distinguished panelists, members of the Council, Madam Vice Chair of the Advocacy Committee, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. It is my pleasure to be part of this laudable event organized by this chamber. As you're all aware, the impact of the novel COVID-19 pandemic has been overwhelming, as evident in the deterioration of economic activities across the world. For Nigeria, it came on the back of the collapse of international oil prices, which, along with the necessary lockdown, further hampered the economic situation of the country. This led to a significant disruption of supply chain, production and trade activities, as factories and plants were closed, while commercial activities and movement of goods and services within the country were severely constrained, culminating in job losses and downsizing by various businesses, particularly in the MSME space. Also, this impact has been significantly felt across various sectors, such as the healthcare, manufacturing, tourism and hospitality, transportation, and retail sectors, amongst others. Of course, individuals, households, MSMEs, and large corporations have not been spared from the effects of the crisis. The Nigerian economy had hitherto recovered from the 2016 recession and grew at 2.2% in 2019. On the supply side, growth was mainly driven by the services sector, which represents about 50% of our GDP. On the demand side, however, growth was driven by strengthening investment and growing net exports, which more than compensated for still declining domestic consumption. Despite this, the GDP growth at the rate of 2.2% remained below the estimated population growth rate of 2.6% per year. However, we then witnessed a decline in the first quarter of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In order to cushion the effect of the pandemic on the citizens and MSMEs in the country, especially the vulnerable micro and small end of the spectrum, our government announced a number of responses, which included the 2.3 trillion Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan, a private sector-led coalition against COVID-19, also known as the COVID Relief Fund, a 500 billion COVID-19 Crisis Intervention Fund, and a reduction in the price of fertilizers as subsidy to farmers. The 2.3 trillion Economic Sustainability Plan, launched by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari on 30th March 2020, aims to limit the expected decline in economic growth from the corona outbreak and minimize the resulting cases of business failures, job losses, and increased poverty. The plan comprises a mix of policy and project approaches towards agriculture and agro-processing, housing and road construction, renewable energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, and creating a digital economy. Some of these key projects, and I just give the highlights, include in the digital technology, where fostering innovation is critical to youth employment and expanding access for SMEs, a mass housing program that is expected to deliver up to 300,000 homes, whilst engaging local companies and using locally sourced materials, installation of solar home systems to cover up to 5 million households, promotion of domestic gas utilization, which involves stimulating indigenous manufacture of gas cylinders, mass agricultural programs, strengthening of social safety nets, and a number of large MSME sustainability schemes, on which I will provide more details shortly. This is because Nigeria cannot afford to neglect the huge MSME segment, which accounts for 50% of our GDP and constitutes about 96% of registered businesses and employs about 70% of the total labor force. In this regard, the Economic Sustainability Plan gave high priority to the implementation of a 50 billion Naira MSME Survival Fund and a 15 billion guaranteed offtake scheme, making a total of 75 billion for both schemes. The Survival Fund, which has two components, there's a payroll support, has already commenced yesterday with the registration of beneficiaries from private schools. As of this morning, around 7 o'clock, up to 38,000 applicants had registered on our platform. The guaranteed offtake stimulus scheme will follow suit in a seamless manner. The two schemes are aimed to target or at least impact at least 1.7 million entities and individual beneficiaries across the country. Now, the 60 billion MSME Survival Fund is a conditional grant to support vulnerable MSMEs in meeting their payroll obligations and safeguard jobs in MSMEs from the shock of the COVID-19 pandemic. The scheme is also estimated to save nothing less than 1.3 million jobs across the country. And here we're targeting an average of 35,000 individuals per state across the country. This will be extended to service providers in the transportation sector, such as bus drivers, taxi drivers, as well as mechanics, electricians, plumbers, and other artisans. On the other hand, the 15 billion guaranteed offtake stimulus scheme is to safeguard 300,000 existing jobs in at least 100,000 MSMEs and sustain their local production. So this scheme will give preference to specific priority products made by MSMEs in reasonably sufficient volumes across each state. This is to mitigate failure of small businesses and job losses in the MSME sector due to the slowdown in economic activities. Both schemes will be implemented over an initial period of 3 months, and Mr. President has approved the 45% female-owned businesses, as well as 5% for those with special needs, must be taken care of in the two interventions. So in summary, the payroll support, what we're trying to do is to give at least between 30,000, which is the minimum wage in Nigeria, and 50,000 to companies, and it's a minimum of 3 to a maximum of 10 employees per company. For the general MSME grant, there's a 50,000 Naira grant, which will be provided because if you feel you don't have the numbers, that is, you don't have a minimum of 3, you can just apply just for a one-off grant of 50,000 Naira. For the artisan transport grant, this is a 30,000 Naira one-off grant as well, just to buffer income losses. And finally, in collaboration with the Corporate Affairs Commission, there's going to be free business registration for new small businesses. And here we're targeting a total of 250,000 new businesses. It is also important to state that the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment is a crucial agency for the attainment of Mr. President's aspirations of lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. And in this regard, there are areas where we have carried out several activities and achievements over the last 12 months. And I'm not going to go into the details, but just to highlight, such as the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan, where we're focusing on driving backward integration and increasing domestic production of key products, especially sugar, palm oil, cotton textiles, garment, automobiles, and so on. On creating an enabling environment and investment, here I'm sure members of the council are very much familiar with the work of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, and Nigeria also concessioning 2 brownfield special economic zones. We've started with Kano and Calabar, while the other 4 greenfield sites, we're going to continue work on that. And then, of course, in terms of trade facilitation with the upcoming AFCFTA, where work has advanced, at least on the Nigerian side, and very soon we'll take a memo to the Federal Executive Council for approval and then subsequent ratification. Now, let me speak briefly on the achievements of the Emergency Operations Center, which we established at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And here I would like to express our appreciation to the organized private sector, particularly to the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, because they came to collaborate with the ministry in this regard. So we initiated this very proactive approach in partnership with MAN and other stakeholders at the beginning of the pandemic, basically to address the critical issues of essential commodities, how to source raw materials, how to move these materials, commodities, and pharmaceuticals across the country. And during the period that the Emergency Operations Center was at its peak, we received and resolved a total of 121 cases of complaints on challenges being faced on the effective supply and delivery of essential commodities across the country. Of the total incidences, 76% were issues concerning availability and movement of food items, essential and pharmaceutical products across the geopolitical zones. A breakdown of the total cases received and resolved by geopolitical zones revealed that the North Central region accounted for 27%, while the Southeast accounted for 24%, and 31% from the Southwest, and the South-South region accounted for 17%. In addition, the Emergency Operations Center assisted over 113 companies to boost the production of hand sanitizers, face masks, ventilators, ethanol, and the rest during the lockdown. On the back of our achievement and proposed strategies, the ministry and the federal government looks forward to collaborating with this chamber in the following areas. 1, to facilitate the creation of market access for products manufactured by MSMEs in order to foster bilateral trade relations between our 2 countries. Secondly, to facilitate business dialogue between the federal government of Nigeria and the British government, especially in areas relating to agri-projects, oil and gas, power and renewable energy, digital and technology, health, education, hospital, manufacturing and infrastructure development. And lastly, to facilitate and promote investments in Nigeria by British investors across the agriculture value chain and other sectors highlighted. Once again, I would like to express my appreciation to this chamber for putting together this event at this period of economic rebound from the COVID-19 disruptions. And on this note, Mr. Moderator, I would like to wish all the speakers and the panelists and participants a very successful event. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thanks a lot for coming, even at such very stringent plans that you have. I'm told that you're not going to be available. I don't know if I could just confirm that. Would you still be around for a while?
I will just stay on for about 5 minutes, okay, because I left a steering committee meeting for the guaranteed offtake. So I need to go back to that meeting. So I'll just hang on for about 5 minutes. Maybe there's some questions that I need to answer directly. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't have any questions directly for you, but I'll probably just ask one. And I know the Survival Fund has just commenced, and you said it's for 3 months. And already in a day, you've already got 38,000 registrations in one day. Do you think the 3 months is going to be enough for you to disperse? And what is the methodology or modalities you're going to use currently to disburse those funds?
Actually, as I said, we've already set up this platform, but we've looked at the reality of the country. And in designing the disbursements, we took out Lagos, Kano, and Abia states as special states because of their contribution to the GDP. There are a lot of MSMEs, a lot of institutions, companies. So we've done a kind of allotment for the states. Each state, both individuals and entities, are likely to get up to 40,000 beneficiaries. Whereas Lagos, we're looking at 60 to 65,000 beneficiaries. So in terms of outreach, there's a lot of media activity going on. We've set up information centers in the states, which is why, interestingly, as the 38,000 I referred to, I found it very interesting this morning. The Kano state had the highest number of applicants registering already online. Now, once you'll also recall that we decided to start like a clustered registration. We have those private school providers registering first. Once we're able to get the private school providers, and then we go to the hospitality sector, we have some filters. And for the payroll support, by the time we've done the first selection, the rest of the payment becomes automated because we're paying over a period of 3 months. So it's going to be automated. We have the BVNs, we have the institutions where they belong to. So that will be automated. It's only the guaranteed offtake scheme because there we're going to take things like hand sanitizers, face masks, and so on. That may take us a little bit over the 3-month period. But for the payroll support, I think we're going to be able to do that in the 3 months that's required.
Okay, great.
Thank you very
much. I'm really glad to know that you're using technology and leveraging on technology, which is excellent. And just one more question, if you have time. That's from the audience. Rebecca Osewa. She was asking, I would like to know the process of developing the cotton supply chain. What support can I get to kickstart the process? I have engaged with the president of the cotton industry in Nigeria, and it was not professional at all. I need support to move my UK company into Nigeria, and nothing seems clear and nobody actually accessible to support the process. So really talking about the cotton supply chain. Don't know if you could share some light there.
Yes, actually, within the context of the Industrial Revolution Plan, there are various components, including cotton, that we're looking at. And rightfully, cotton strides between our ministry and the Ministry of Agriculture. But for example, when I mentioned that we have new special economic zones coming up, including Funtua, cotton has become a major issue for us. So we're talking about looking at the cotton seed, that is longer fibers and so on and so forth. And then we're having discussions. In fact, if that particular lady who asked this question, we're going to have like a Zoom meeting with our partners from Katsina State, because we have a lot of interested investors coming in to a discussion, I think sometime end of this month, but she can link up with me so that she participates in this meeting. But we have companies that are interested in getting improved seedlings for the cotton, because the cotton belt in the north, particularly that I can speak of, all kind of went into the production of maize when the textiles were down. So now we're trying to encourage them to come back to cotton production, and thereby, by the time we get some of the textile companies to start working, we have enough cotton. So I would suggest she could get in touch with me or my office. We'll invite her to join us. It's a Zoom meeting with the different partners, but also she could address a specific query so that the department that's dealing with the Industrial Revolution Plan could advise her better on how to key into the revision of this component of the plan. So that's the much information that I could give, but she could always contact us.
Okay,
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank
Yes.
you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Just before I go, so the contacting, as in, I don't know if you would share some of the details with us so we can share it with the audience, and also how to contact you, because that was obviously a challenge. So thank you very much, Ambassador. We're really grateful. I'm going to jump right into the panel session now, and we'd like to say thank you for taking the time to spend with us. We're really grateful, ma'am.
Thank you very much, and have a lovely morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to jump right into the panel discussants. I would like to introduce them to you, everybody, now. So I would like to introduce, first off, Hamzat Ayodele Suber. He's the Executive Chairman, Lagos Internal Revenue Service, ably represented here by Mr. Tokumbo Akonde. Don't know, Mr. Tokumbo, are you there? So Mr. Tokumbo Akande is Special Advisor to the Executive Chairman of Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. I'll just give a brief of Mr. Hamzat. Mr. Hamzat Suber has 38 years accounting experience. His professional career started in the international firm of PwC. He's a renowned accountant, and he also set up his firm. And now, of course, he is the executive chairman of Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, as I said, ably represented by Tokumbo Akonde, who is the Special Advisor to the Executive Chairman of Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Right, and I would like to also introduce our second panelist, who is Mr. Shubham. Thank you, Mr. Shubham Chowdhury, Country Director for Nigeria at the World Bank. Since joining the bank in 2004, Mr. Shubham has held many positions. He was the South Asia and Indonesia Practice Manager for the World Bank, Macroeconomic and Fiscal Management Global Practice, where he oversaw macro fiscal and economic policy related work. He was the manager of the Washington, D.C. based team of Poverty Reduction and Economic Management Department for East Asia and the Pacific. As lead economist for Indonesia, Chowdhury, Mr. Shubham was responsible for leading the overall economic policy dialogue, advisory and development policy lending work of Indonesia. He managed the Jakarta-based economic team, which worked closely with partners in government and in the developing community to further Indonesia's development agenda. Prior to relocating to Jakarta in early 2008, Mr. Chowdhury worked primarily in China and East Asia regional policy issues. I also like to also state that he worked as an economist and he lectured economics for more than 10 years. So he is vast in his knowledge and also in his knowledge of emerging markets, which is extremely important for what we're about to talk about. So I'd like to welcome our two panelists, and I would like to just start off by just asking a general, if you could just give us a quick general brief of what your take is on the recovery plan. You know, the whole world reset, so there's so much resetting going on. And I think I'll put that question first to Mr. Shubham, because you have so much knowledge on all the resets that have happened, and you can see clearly how Nigeria is trying to reset. Could you give us a general brief of what you see?
Thank you, David, and thank you to the NBCC for inviting me to join. Look, in terms of Nigeria's response to the crisis, if I can just step back one step and say Nigeria, the impact of the COVID crisis on Nigeria has been, you know, like other countries, Nigeria has been hit hard, but in some ways for Nigeria, it's really put the COVID crisis has put Nigeria at a very critical historical juncture. And so for Nigeria, unlike many other countries, the response is not just a response to the immediate crisis, but also an opportunity to get back on track to fully realize Nigeria's full development potential, which frankly, for the last 4 decades has been set back. And it actually dates back to the oil price shocks of the early 1980s. So this is another oil price shock of that magnitude. You will have heard us say that, you know, the economy faces a potential recession, you know, not seen since in 4 decades. But this is also the opportunity for Nigeria to respond. The government has already taken a lot of bold steps, and we heard the Honorable Minister of State talk about the Economic Sustainability Plan, other programs and initiatives that have been put in place. The key is going to be to the implementation of them and robust implementation. Nigeria has had lots of plans, but it's really the follow through. And I have to emphasize that a lot of the kind of the unfinished agenda here is on the basic, what we call structural reforms, leveling the playing field for all private businesses, small and large, to realize their full potential, to grow, to create jobs, to invest. And a lot of that requires, you know, political will and follow through. And then on top of that, Nigeria can come in to marshal the fiscal resources and make the public investments in infrastructure and power. Power is hugely important. So for Nigeria, what we see is this confluence of a large, long-standing development agenda that we'd like to help Nigeria make progress on so it can realize its full potential. I mean, look, Nigeria, even with 4 decades of sort of kind of floating, is already the largest economy in Africa. It has the potential to be one of the largest economies in the world and create jobs for, you know, the 3 million Nigerian youth who come of working age every year, right? So this crisis both, you know, makes it an imperative, but also an opportunity to kind of get back on that path. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Shubham. And you mentioned, of course, potential. I won't tell you my age right now, but from my birth, I mean, I've been hearing once I understood potential. The potential is there, really. The potential is there, but what is the problem? Why haven't we kind of captured that potential? The potential is huge. You mentioned another thing, which is it's almost like a reset, right? We're going back to all the things, all the wonderful things we have, which oil has kind of dampened. The double whammy we got of oil shock as well as COVID is like a two sucker punches, like someone just gave us I don't know, massive hit on both sides. And I think that has really brought out innovation. It has brought out innovation tremendously. And I actually feel that productivity has even gone up, which I think is a key. As an economist, productivity is very important. But I would like to come down to Lagos State. Lagos State being the champion, I would call Lagos State the champion when it comes to innovation. And so I would like to come to you, sir, Mr. Tokunbo Akonde. So the pandemic has laid bare cracks in most countries' institutions, right? Raise the significant, and you have this e-tax administration that Lagos State has pioneered, if I may say so. How is the LIRS, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service as well, eliminating the bottlenecks that taxpayers currently face, including members of the NBCC?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a good opportunity to be here, and I must first express my executive chairman's apology for not being able to attend, basically because he's currently attending the ministerial retreat for Lagos state officials, which started yesterday. Now, like Riley said, every crisis, yes, is manifested in terms of maybe significant threats to the extant norm as we know it. But also, in most cases, it also presents opportunities which hitherto were not really apparent. Now, for us in Lagos State and especially in LRS, the focus has been on digitizing our platforms, and it came in handy when we had the lockdown nationwide. I will try to, there are some basic facts which I think I would like to share. The first one is what I've told you about every crisis being providing opportunities for us to do this. We all know tax is a necessary burden. So in a crisis situation, it becomes additional burden. And then, of course, Lagos State, as you know, is just a subnational in a federation. So what we did, essentially, is that the platform we launched late last year, and then also we have what we call a contact center, which we realized that this thing is going to maybe cause a lot of disruption in our operation. We upgraded the facilities in the contact center. So throughout the period of the lockdown, we were actually providing services to taxpayers who could access us. Yeah, it is a limited segment of the taxpayer population that we could attend to. Basically, those who have access to maybe digital facilities, and also those who have access to telephone. But the beauty of it is that in Lagos, I believe close to 80% of the business community, if not 100%, have access to telephone. So we could provide some services to them. Not full service as it were, but at least some modest service that we can possibly provide. So essentially, that is what we used during the crisis, which we still is still with us. But most importantly also was that we were able to formulate some policies on what we think the government, as it were, despite its limitations, as a subnational entity, can provide as palliatives to taxpayers in the state. I can assure you that some, I wouldn't know if members of NBCC have been able to access some of these palliatives, but I will go into the details later. But essentially, that is what Lagos has done. And we are still fine-tuning it, and we hope that we can do it much better than what we have done currently. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. The Minister of State mentioned, Ambassador Mariam mentioned the payroll support as a payroll support, and mainly I think focused on educational institutions. And really, those are, I think, our youth. When I say youth, our kids really have been those silently suffering during this crisis. I think it's a big psychological effect on youth and kids all over the world, and Nigeria is not left out. And I think from March, I mean, schools have been closed. I think there's a big reopening plan, and Lagos State is with that as well. And it's affected private schools. Could you just briefly tell us what that is and how they're keen into this national intervention? And I don't know if Lagos has something similar.
Currently, we don't have what we call payroll support, but I think the federal government has taken the right step, because the key thing is that you can't give what you don't have. At the state level, all states, including Lagos, actually manage personal income tax, you understand? And also the administration of transactional taxes like CGT, that's capital gains tax, and stamp duties. So the company income tax that under which you will have this payroll support is actually a responsibility of the federal government. So essentially, that's why I think the federal government is on the right track. And I can assure you that the schools, institutions in Lagos will, of course, key into it and try to take advantage of it. Because essentially, the key thing for us, like Shubham said, is that it's implementation of policies. What we need currently to power ourselves out of this likely depression is what we call increased domestic consumption at the household level. And how do you achieve that? Is keep people in employment. And if federal government can do that support, all well and good. But for those areas which we have control over, which is the personal income tax, I will highlight when the time permits the things that Lagos has done in a way to assuage or ameliorate the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the citizens of Lagos and the good taxpayers of the state. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for that. And for the audience, if you want to ask any questions, please just do that. Type in the chat. Type in the chat. After a brief while, we'll kind of look at the questions. Just type the questions in the Q&A. There's a Q&A box. Type the questions in the Q&A. I would like to come to you, Mr. Shubham, if you may. And it's the multilateral organizations like the World Bank play in promoting global economic stability. And where do developing countries like Nigeria fit in to this probably new focus after this pandemic?
So I think at the global level, first, what the World Bank and many other multilateral institutions have tried to do is make sure that there is a global effort to help in terms of containing the outbreak. Initially, by making sure that we could provide all the support that countries need to both, be able to pay for the necessary, whether it's, testing reagents, personal protective equipment, things like that to respond to the COVID outbreak. And now we're starting to talk about how can we make sure that effort on the health front, on the economic front, which in some ways for many emerging economies is going to be even more severe. I mean, one of the things about countries like Nigeria is that the population is young. So if you look at the, and being young helps in terms of withstanding the COVID pandemic. So it's not something that should, one should be complacent about. But if you look at what's happened in many of the Western European countries or in the US, Nigeria, and many other sub-Saharan African economies have been spared that. But the economic impact is likely to be a lot more severe. And so what we're trying at the global level, some of this is helping to kind of rethink what kind of bilateral and multilateral assistance economies might need to make sure that the channels for trade and exports remain open. And also, I think a big issue for many sub-Saharan African economies, a bit less so for Nigeria, but for many others, is to rethink where they are on debt, especially private commercial debt. Because the oil shock has hit, so countries like Angola or others, the oil shock has hit the economies very.
Yeah, coming to debt, really, and I think this is for both parties. Capital to me, I think, is one of the most, there's a dearth of capital. So SMEs, I'm also an SME, it is extremely difficult to get access to capital, the kind of capital that would give you long-term progress and long-term growth for the nation. Because without capital, really, there's really not much we can do. And both as a government and as individuals and investors and businesses. And so that capital, not even capital flight now, but more capital to actually sustain growth in institutions, sustain growth in the service sector. Now that we have the currency crisis, obviously, we are kind of more affordable to export. So exports should be a big thing, but we don't even have the capital to expand. I know quite a bit of SMEs that would love to expand and export, but that dearth of capital is a big issue. And I want both panelists to address that. What can we do about that?
Yeah, from our own end, because we are essentially a revenue agency, what we can do at our end is to ease the cash flow pattern for the taxpayers. And how do we do that? Essentially, if I can quickly run through some of these palliatives we have available, is that we have allowed a situation where existing tax debts that taxpayers have can actually, you can bring forth for us a kind of payment plan that suits your business, that allows you at least some kind of ease the cash flow for your business and then allow you to sustain and keep running your business. Once you bring it in, it will most like we have a situation like way back even before the initial close down, a big multinational actually applied and it was granted in Lagos State. So we have this instrumental payment of outstanding taxes, but it's still done on a case-by-case basis. We will review your presentation, and then on the basis of what you have given to us, we will grant you that concession. Aside from that, of course, the state has approved that we waive all late penalties that are due on some of the taxes that should have been paid during the time when the state was on lockdown. These are financial reliefs that we have in this scheme that as of today. Then also for people that have outstanding tax audit liabilities from 2009 to 2015, and you are able to come up with a payment plan that terminates on or before 31st of December. You may say it's not really important, but I will tell you why I say it's important. Because from experience that we have seen here is that this waiver of interest and penalty, for some companies, it is a life-saving thing, because out of, we have had, since we launched it a couple of months ago, 11 have actually taken advantage of it. And we are looking at something in the range of over 100, almost close to 120 million naira that was now available, that you could have taken away from them, but it's now available for them to do their businesses and what have you. So these are part of the things that we have put in place. But like I said, we can broadly classify the reliefs and palliatives that we have under two headings, basically the administrative headings and the one that relates to financial reliefs. But because of the nature of our laws, those financial reliefs, of course, cannot be granted by the agency. It has to be granted by the chief executive of the state, which graciously Mr. Governor has granted on those issues, which I think I will probably read them out before the close of the session so that people who are not aware. And I'm sure the party that actually even requested for the instrumental payment of his tax liabilities, I'm sure is a member of NBCC, so I know. So, well, other members of NBCC also can take advantage of what we have and say. It is a little thing that you have because at the state level, like I said, we manage only personal income tax. But yes, I'm sure the big thing will be from the federal level, which I'm sure the Federal Inland Revenue Service is working on. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. And of course, you mentioned 2009 to 2015 outstanding tax liabilities. You can negotiate and all that. That's very key, especially for NBCC members. Thank you very much. And I would like to pose the same question to Mr. Mr. Shubham. I would like to also add that maybe more until, of course, they've now reached the states that they're one of the richest companies in the world, right? But how could you, because coming out of poverty to me is capital. Capital is key to being a nation, being able to come out of poverty, access to capital. So I'd like to get your perspective on that, sir.
So I absolutely agree. It's capital that helps, that entrepreneurs need. Nigeria has lots of entrepreneurial talent, lots of energy. So the question is, how does that capital get unlocked? And ultimately, it has to be private capital. You know, it cannot be, you cannot look to the government to provide that kind of capital. It has to come from private capital. It has to survive a market viability test, or as banks would say, many of your members would say, it has to be bankable. So the question is, what will it take for Nigeria to unlock the private capital that it could tap into so that Nigerian entrepreneurs, small businesses could access that? for us, I think partly some of it is on the infrastructure side. This is where, things like power, power is like the oxygen for an economy. Firms in Nigeria are struggling to breathe on that front. So, I think that's where the public sector's role in helping the power sector turn around is critical. But a lot of it is also about the clarity, transparency, and consistency in terms of the regulatory and business environment, in terms of knowing that there'll be a level playing field. And that, I think, is where there's a long ways to go. The Honorable Minister of State mentioned the improvements that Nigeria has made in terms of the business environment. But great improvements, but still a long ways to go. And this is something that your members, private businesses, will know better than anyone. What are the kinds of regulatory and other impediments that get in the way of providing the clarity that, okay, I see the potential here, but I'm also willing to put money into this. And not only that, I'm able to persuade a potential financier that his or her money, capital, will be well put to use in the Nigerian context. If I think about the Nigerian diaspora, there's lots of private capital there. What would it take to bring that private capital back to Nigeria? I think there's capital within Nigeria. What would it take to deploy that to help Nigerian entrepreneurs? It's not so much something just in the financial realm. We think it's actually in looking industry by industry, business segment by business segment. What are the regulatory impediments? And often, as well as the complementary infrastructure investments that are needed. But I think the regulatory impediments we focus on, because those are the things that don't cost money. What they require is that political will and focus. And frankly, it's where the state governors themselves can play a leading role. I think, Lagos state by itself is one of the largest economies in Africa, but its potential is even more to kind of free up that space. And that's what's ultimately going to unlock the capital.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that. Clarity, transparency, and consistency. And if I may add, like any economist, it's incentives. What are those incentives? There's risks and incentives. So what are those risks and how are you going to kind of assuage those risks? How are you going to give those risks to the parties that are best fit to actually take those risks? And our financial sector, our financial industry needs to improve or kind of come up with more innovative solutions. And again, that still comes down to clarity, transparency, and consistency. Thank you very much for that. I'll ask a question from the audience now, and I would like to say that we're just about coming above time, so we're going to finish in about 5 minutes, just to give a time check. But I'd like to ask this question from Nitesh Uttam. This is to Mr. Shubham. What does the World Bank rep think of the current CBN exchange rate policy? The real sector is severely being disrupted by the same. I know it's a hot topic.
So look, I have no problem saying this. It's exactly the three things that I mentioned before. Exchange rate policy, whether a firm, business, a domestic business that's, created jobs, knows that it will have the access to foreign exchange that it needs for its operating purposes, clarity, consistency, transparency. Okay. And I think that's what one needs in exchange rate policy. And then part of this is just allowing the market, the exchange rate to respond to market signals to kind of ensure that there's sufficient, availability of FX. I don't want to kind of underestimate the challenge that central banks all over the world are facing in trying to ensure that they're not disruptive outflows. At any time when you have a spike in global risk aversion, there's a natural tendency for many of the international investors, especially the hot money portfolio investors, to immediately kind of abandon ship. So central banks need to manage that, but the trick is to strike that right balance between avoiding disruptive kind of movements in the exchange rate or disruptive outflows with ensuring that, especially real sector participants have the transparency, clarity, and consistency so that where they need foreign currency for imported intermediate or service foreign exchange, foreign currency denominated debt, Otherwise, it's an aspect of the business environment, like access to power, regulatory clarity domestically, or how burdensome it is to pay taxes, whether in Lagos or elsewhere. So it's all part of the same package.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll just take two more questions from the audience, and then I'm going to have to introduce our Vice President of NBCC to kind of close the session. But thank you very much to our speakers. And it's a question for Mr. Tokumbo. It's what is your take on multiple tax issues in Lagos State?
Now, this is something that we deal with.
Maybe you can
day.
kind of define what that is, what you've seen. Maybe you found. Maybe let me make it simpler. Tell us stuff that you've actually seen multiple tax and you caught it, you stopped that, you found it, you stopped it, and then I don't know, or maybe it doesn't exist. I don't know.
No. Multiple tax is a situation where you subject the same tax base to different taxes by different authorities. Now, it does not apply in Nigeria. Nigeria is a federation. We have 3 tiers of government: federal, states, and local government. Now, we have what we call approved list of taxes. Now, on the approved list of taxes, you see that you don't have a situation where the same base is taxed by different tiers of government. However, because of what you have is that the multiplicity of interface, I think one of the what the participants actually, between a taxpayer, a resident, and the various tax authorities. So now what we've been trying to do, both at the JTB level, that's Joint Tax Board level, and also at the state level through the Office of the Commissioner of Finance, is to have a sort of harmonization of all these tax rates and codes. For us in Lagos, what we have done is to actually put this approved list of taxes on. We have run what we call media campaign on it. We've put it on our website so that should in case we have instances of people who go to harass or whatever reasons, maybe do things that are not really legal, then the taxpayer or the can quickly say, well, I'm not supposed to pay this to you. This is what you have as your approved list. And then we have what we call the Citizens Gate in Lagos. It's a digital platform which allows you to escalate whatever issues that you have to the appropriate authorities in Lagos. So what I can assure you that we are doing currently is that under the SIFTAS program, which I think maybe Shibon was trying to let you know, it's the State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability, and Sustainability Program. We are trying to do a codification of all these rates, and we will use that opportunity to also to simplify all these things and possibly for the first time reduce the so-called number of approved rates and taxes that will be applicable first in Lagos State, and possibly also we would usually what we do is that we first implement certain things in Lagos, we discuss it at the national level, then other states can possibly adopt it. So that is what we have. We don't have multiple taxes in Lagos. What we have is multiplicity of interfaces between taxpayer and the various tax authorities that we are trying to address. And it's a work in progress, and hopefully we should get it done before the end of this year, so that because like I said, every crisis presents opportunities for you to do things differently. And I think we are going to seize this opportunity because we know it is important to drive and encourage entrepreneurship so that people can get employed. When people get employed, they get paid salaries. We're able to take some of it through payee, which we use to help those that are the vulnerable in the society. And that way also, the economy grows and eventually you can expect some kind of economic development. That is what route we are trying to push in Lagos. Thank you.
David, you're muted.
Wow. Sorry about that. Muted. I'm muted. So thank you. I would like to quickly get Mr. Shubham's take on SIFTAS. SIFTAS is State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability, and Sustainability Program for Results. That key thing for results. So this is a program initiated by the World Bank, and we believe it's been going on for a while. Just very briefly, sir, if you can just give us a progress there, Mr. Shubham.
Yes, so this is a program under which it's really the federal government has entered into a kind of a mutual accountability understanding with the states, where the federal government provides results-based financing, where the states undertake specific actions, such as the ones that Mr. Akande described. The federal government provides the financing based on verifying the results. This is potential model for how the federal and state governments interact in terms of, having very clear results-based understandings. In our opinion, the SIFTAS program has worked wonderfully because the states have taken on that incentive and have kind of responded, especially in the context of COVID. If you look at, I think, pretty much all the states, 36 states, have passed amended budgets, which are very clearly COVID responsive, have responded to, certain thresholds or criteria in terms of being very transparent so that civil society organizations, private businesses can come in, and also in terms of making it easier so the internal, the revenue service agencies can respond to the needs of firms and small businesses and individual taxpayers as well in their state. So SIFTAS for us is a perfect example of the kind of program we would love to support, where there is that mutually beneficial working relationship between the federal government and the states, all geared towards results.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Mr. Shubham Chaudhuri, Country Director for Nigeria for the World Bank. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you to Mr. Tokunbo Akonde, who is ably representing Mr. Hamzat Dele, who is unavoidably absent. Thank you very much, sirs. And I would like to also introduce Prince Bimbo Olashore. You're here, sir, our Vice President of NBCC, to give us the vote of thanks. We'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for joining us. I think in particular, in terms of my vote of thanks, is probably first of all to thank Ambassador Miriam Kutagun, the Honorable Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, for such an insightful speech. I think she also gave us highlights of government support for the MSMEs. I think it's recognizing the key role that they play in terms of job creation in Nigeria. So really just to thank Her Excellency for such a wonderful intervention. Also to thank our panelists, first of all to Mr. Aidile Subai, the Executive Chairman of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, who was truly and ably represented by Mr. Tokunbo Akonde, the Special Advisor to the Executive Chairman of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. Thank you very much, Mr. Akonde, also for providing us with more clarity on the issue of taxes in Nigeria. And I think that question will keep on turning up, issue of multiplicity of taxes and what we are doing about it. Obviously, again, to thank one of us, Mr. David Brown, the principal partner of D. Brown Consulting, for ably moderating the session. It was quite done in a very professional manner. Thank you, David, for that. To all our council members who are part and parcel of this, I think it's good to see all of you again at this particular program. And to thank the committee, the Business Advocacy Committee and the Programs Committee for organizing this, and obviously to our Secretariat for a wonderful job in putting this together. So we thank you all for coming, and this is one of so many events that we usually have planned at NBCC. Our next event we'd like to talk about is our October 15 webinar, which is termed Nigeria's telecommunication industry post-COVID. You see, now we are narrowing down to specific industries. Today's one was about Nigerian economy in general, but the next one now is zooming in on the telecoms industry, and that is coming up on the October 15th. And I look forward to welcoming all of you to that particular program. We're happy to welcome everybody here to be a member of the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure you've been tracking and following all we're doing. If you would like to be a member, you can please contact Osareme Okue,
His details will be in the chat box, and he's also on your screen now. He's a membership officer, and you can reach him at osareme.okwe@nbcc.org.ng. That's if you want to join us to be a member of NBCC, Nigeria's foremost bilateral chamber of commerce. So it's thank everybody for joining us, and look forward to welcoming you to our next program, which will be on the October 15th with a webinar which is named Nigeria's telecommunication industry post-COVID. Again, you can follow us on our various social media handles. We are there on Facebook, on Instagram. You can reach us on all our available channels. So thank you very much for being with us, and look forward to welcoming you at our next program. Thank you very much. Bye.